Please like this video, share, comment, and subscribe for more amazing stories. I hope you enjoy the tale you're about to hear. Let's begin. The late afternoon sun filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the spacious living room of Michael Thompson's modern, yet cozy home in the outskirts of Chicago. Michael sat on his favorite leather armchair, a cup of lukewarm coffee resting on the side table beside him. He stared out the window, not really looking at the cityscape, but deep in thought, lost in the events of the past few weeks. His phone buzzed on the coffee table, snapping him out of his daze. He picked it up, expecting a message from work, but what he saw made his heart drop into his stomach. It was a text from Sarah, his wife. "I think we need to talk." It had been a while since Sarah had seemed distant. At 34, Michael had built a comfortable life with Sarah, his college sweetheart. They met at Northwestern University in a literature class, both passionate about the classics, and immediately bonded over their shared love for books, coffee, and late-night talks about life. Their relationship had always been easy, a perfect blend of love, companionship, and mutual respect. But lately, something had shifted. The excitement they once had for each other seemed to have faded, replaced by routine and an undercurrent of tension that Michael couldn't explain. He was always busy with work, sometimes pulling late nights at his tech firm, trying to build his company. Sarah, on the other hand, was a successful interior designer who worked her own hours, but she had become more and more preoccupied with her career. Michael had always admired her independence, but lately, he noticed a subtle change in her: less affection, fewer shared moments. The laughter and spontaneous outings were now replaced by long silences and cryptic text messages. He opened the message and typed back, "What's going on, Sarah? You've been acting strange lately." As he waited for her reply, he glanced over at their photo on the mantelpiece, taken during their last trip to Paris. They looked so happy, so in love. A flash of unease rippled through him as he read her message again. "I think we need to talk." It sounded serious, almost ominous. Could it be something about their marriage? He had no idea, but it didn't feel good. A few moments later, his phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from his best friend, Ethan. "Man, you gotta see this. Sarah's been posting a lot lately on Instagram." Michael frowned. Sarah's Instagram was usually a collection of interior design tips and snapshots of their home, occasionally some photos from her design projects. But lately, Ethan was right. There had been a noticeable uptick in Sarah's posts. He clicked on the link Ethan had sent. His heart pounded as he saw the recent posts. The first photo was of Sarah, dressed in a tight black workout outfit, her hair styled just so, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The caption read, "Learning to embrace the new me. Sometimes it's hard to change, but I'm ready for what's next." The next post was a video, Sarah laughing with a man Michael didn't recognize. Standing too close to her, his hand resting casually on her waist as they posed together in a gym. Ethan had circled the man in red. "Damon," he wrote, "her new personal trainer." Michael's stomach churned. He had heard Sarah mention Damon a few weeks ago, just a passing comment about how he was helping her with her fitness goals. But now seeing this, it felt off, too much, too soon. And that touch. The way Damon was so at ease with Sarah, like they shared a connection Michael had never seen before. The uneasy feeling in Michael's gut grew into a wave of anxiety. Michael tapped on the video and watched it in its entirety. Sarah seemed to be laughing genuinely, her eyes sparkling in a way he hadn't seen in months. Her body language was open, unguarded. She was clearly comfortable with Damon. He felt a surge of jealousy, followed by a sense of dread. Why was she acting like this? His mind raced. What was going on? Was she really just trying to get in better shape? Or was there something more to it? Michael had always trusted Sarah implicitly, but now doubts were creeping in. He looked at his phone again, debating whether to confront her immediately or wait for her to explain. Before he could decide, his phone rang. It was Sarah. His heart skipped a beat. "Hey, Mike," she said, her voice sounding softer than he expected, almost like she was trying to ease into a difficult conversation. "Can we talk now?" "Yeah, I was actually looking at your posts," he said, keeping his voice steady despite the unease gnawing at him. "The one with Damon. You seem pretty close." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and Michael's mind raced, trying to gauge her reaction. "Mike," Sarah started slowly, "there's something I need to tell you." His chest tightened. He knew where this was going. "What's going on, Sarah? I don't understand. Why are you acting like this all of a sudden?" "I've been thinking a lot lately," Sarah replied, her voice wavering slightly. "About us, about me. And I think we need some space." Michael felt the blood drain from his face. "Space?" he echoed, his voice barely a whisper. "What do you mean by that?" "I don't know. I think we've been drifting. I don't want to hurt you, Mike, but I can't keep pretending everything is okay." The words hit him like a ton of bricks. His mind scrambled to make sense of what she was saying. "So this is it? You want a break?" His voice cracked slightly, and he hated himself for it. He had always prided himself on keeping his emotions in check. But this was different. "I think it's for the best," Sarah said quietly. "I'm sorry." The call ended abruptly, leaving Michael alone with his thoughts. He sank back into the chair, staring blankly at the wall. His mind was a whirlpool of confusion, pain, and betrayal. Had she already made up her mind? Was this really happening? He had always been so sure about their relationship, so sure about her. But now nothing felt certain. He stood up and paced the living room, trying to make sense of everything. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Ethan. "Man, I don't know how to tell you this, but Sarah and Damon are way more than just trainer and client. I saw them together the other night at the bar. Getting pretty cozy." Michael's heart sank. He stared at the screen in disbelief. Was Ethan serious? His mind raced again, but the signs were starting to piece together. Sarah's behavior, Damon's presence in her life. Could this be happening? Could Sarah be cheating on him? The possibility made his stomach turn. He had to know for sure. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe for more incredible stories. I hope you're enjoying the journey so far, so let's dive right back in. Michael stared at his phone, still trying to wrap his mind around what Ethan had just told him. Sarah and Damon were more than just a trainer and client? That wasn't possible, was it? He'd known Sarah for over a decade. They'd built their lives together. Or so he thought. The more Michael thought about it, the more the pieces seemed to fall into place. The long nights at the gym, Sarah's increasing disinterest in their marriage, and now this. The secret messages, the lingering glances. Was it really a betrayal? Had his wife been planning this for months? He was pacing the living room now, running his fingers through his hair, his mind racing. What was his next move? Should he confront Sarah right now? Or was it too soon? Should he wait for more concrete evidence before making a decision? The thought of being betrayed by someone he had loved so completely made his chest tighten with anger. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Ethan. "Man, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think you need to talk to Sarah before this gets worse. I saw them together last night. I'm not sure what's going on, but you need to know." Michael clenched his jaw. Ethan's words confirmed his suspicions. But what was going on with Sarah? Was she really having an affair? Or was this some kind of emotional detachment that had grown out of control? The thought of Sarah, a woman he'd been with for so many years, betraying him left a bitter taste in his mouth. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed his keys and headed out the door. He didn't know where he was going, but he needed answers. He couldn't just sit around and let his mind spiral. He needed to confront this head-on, even if it meant facing the painful truth. As Michael drove to their home, the streets of Chicago seemed almost foreign to him. The once comforting routine of work, dinner, and quiet evenings with Sarah now felt like a distant memory. He found himself reflecting on all the moments they'd shared, the plans they'd made, and the life they'd built. It was as if a shadow had fallen over everything. He pulled into the driveway, noticing Sarah's Range Rover parked outside. Her car was usually there, but today it seemed different. Felt like a signal. Maybe it was a sign to confront her, to finally get to the bottom of this before it consumed him. Michael took a moment, his hand gripping the steering wheel. He was scared. Scared of what he might find. Scared of the fallout. And scared of losing everything. But this wasn't just about the marriage anymore. It was about his dignity. It was about reclaiming his life, whatever that looked like. He walked to the front door and hesitated before knocking. The sound of voices floated from inside the house. Sarah's voice, laughing lightly. That wasn't unusual. But there was something in her laugh now, a lightness he hadn't heard in a long time. It sounded almost free, too free. He knocked, his heart pounding in his chest. The door swung open almost immediately. There stood Sarah, her hair pulled back into a messy ponytail, wearing a loose t-shirt and leggings. She looked almost too casual. But that smile of hers, the one he had always adored, was nowhere to be found. Instead, she wore a guarded expression. "Mike, what's going on?" Sarah asked, her voice calm. But Michael could see the subtle tension in her posture. "I could ask you the same thing," Michael replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I've been hearing some things." Sarah's eyes shifted nervously, and Michael could see her calculating her words. "What things?" "Don't play games with me, Sarah," Michael said, his frustration bubbling over. "I know what's going on. I saw the pictures. I saw the videos. You've been with Damon, haven't you? More than just a personal trainer." For a moment, Sarah didn't say anything. She simply stood there, her expression unreadable. Michael felt his pulse quicken. Was she going to deny it? Was she going to lie to his face? He wasn't sure he could handle that. Finally, Sarah spoke, but her voice was different. It wasn't the gentle tone he had come to expect from her. It was colder, more detached. "Mike, I don't know what you want me to say," she began. "Yes, I've been spending time with Damon. He's been helping me with my fitness and we've gotten closer. But that doesn't mean what you think it means." Michael's chest tightened, and a wave of betrayal hit him like a physical blow. "Closer?" he repeated, the word bitter on his tongue. "You're having an affair with him, aren't you?" I don't know how it happened, Mike," Sarah said, her voice shaking now. "I never planned for any of this. It just happened. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." Michael's mind reeled. This wasn't how he imagined this conversation would go. He had expected denial, perhaps anger. But the guilt in Sarah's eyes, the uncertainty in her voice, it all confirmed his worst fears. "I thought we were happy," Michael said, his voice breaking. "What happened to us? Why didn't you talk to me about this? Why didn't you tell me how you were feeling instead of this?" "I didn't know how to talk to you anymore, Mike," Sarah admitted, her voice quiet now. "You were always working, and I felt so alone. I needed someone to listen. Damon, he paid attention to me. He made me feel seen." The words hit Michael harder than any blow. He had worked hard to provide for Sarah, to build their future. He had done everything he thought was right, but now it seemed like it wasn't enough. "Is that it then? You just needed someone to make you feel seen?" Michael asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "All the things we built together, our life, our future, none of that mattered?" Sarah seemed to flinch at his words, but she didn't deny them. She didn't have to. Her silence spoke volumes. "I'm sorry, Mike," she said again, but it sounded hollow now. "I never meant to hurt you. I needed to feel something." Michael felt a wave of disgust wash over him. He had been a part of this marriage for 10 years, a marriage that meant the world to him. But now, it was nothing but lies. The truth had come crashing down around him, and he was left standing in the wreckage, trying to figure out how to rebuild. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more updates on this story. What happens next? Stay tuned to find out. Let's move on to the next chapter. The next few days felt like a blur to Alex. Each step he took felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of the truth was pressing down on him. The video was undeniable, the evidence clear, yet something inside him still clung to a faint hope. Maybe it was denial, maybe it was the years spent building his life with Molly. But for a brief moment, he wanted to believe that there had been some mistake. He knew better, though. The way she'd smiled when she caught him filming. That cruel, knowing look that seemed to mock him. His love for her had always been one of unwavering trust. And yet here he was, standing at the edge of losing everything. His wife, his home, his reputation. But above all, his heart. He felt it cracking with every step he took, the sharp sting of betrayal gnawing at him. That evening, he sat in his home office, staring out the window at the city lights below, wondering how it had all come to this. He tried to think back to when it had started, to pinpoint the exact moment the cracks in their relationship appeared. But it was hard to say. Was it when she started spending more time at the gym? Or when she hired Damien as her personal trainer? Maybe it was when her social media obsession began, growing by the day, her followers becoming more important than the life they had built together. Whatever it was, Alex couldn't ignore the fact that she had slowly pulled away. At first, he thought it was just her being busy, chasing her dreams, but now he realized it was a slow, deliberate process. She had been planning this betrayal for months, and Alex had been too trusting to see the signs. The confrontation. Alex's phone buzzed, snapping him from his thoughts. It was a message from Molly, her usual tone now laced with cold detachment. "We need to talk. Come home when you're ready." He stared at the message, feeling a pang of bitterness rise in his chest. The audacity of it. She thought she could dictate the terms even now, even after everything she'd done. Alex made his decision. He wasn't going to be her victim any longer. No more pretending. No more running. He was going to face her, and this time he would have the upper hand. He grabbed his coat, leaving his office without a second glance. When he arrived at their house, the familiar comfort of the home they had shared for years seemed distant. The front door creaked as he pushed it open, the air inside cold and still. The silence was deafening. Molly was in the kitchen, her back to him, her focus solely on the stove. For a moment, Alex just watched her. He thought about the past. Their first date, the spontaneous trips, the late-night talks that had once filled their home with warmth. He thought about how they used to dream together, building a future from nothing. Now, all of that seemed like a distant memory, a mirage that had faded under the weight of betrayal. "Molly," Alex finally said, his voice low but firm. She turned, surprised, then quickly masked it with her usual indifference. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice cold. "I think you know," Alex said, stepping closer. "We need to talk." She straightened, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "I don't think there's anything to talk about, Alex. I'm done explaining myself." Her words hit him like a slap, but he held his ground. "You're done explaining? After everything? After what you did?" Molly's eyes narrowed. "What exactly do you think I did?" Alex let out a sharp laugh. "What do I think? I have video evidence of you and Damien in our bed. Don't pretend like you don't know exactly what I'm talking about." Her face flickered for a moment, a brief flash of guilt, or was it fear? But then she covered it up, her expression hardening again. "You don't have proof of anything. You're just trying to manipulate the situation in your favor." "Don't lie to me," Alex said, stepping closer until he was right in front of her. "I saw it. I saw you with him. I heard your words. You called me a joke, Molly. You humiliated me for the whole world to see. And now you're going to pay for it." She took a step back, a flicker of something in her eyes. "Alex, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just—" "No," Alex interrupted. "You don't get to explain this away. Not anymore. You made your choice, and now it's time to face the consequences." The silence between them was thick, the tension palpable. Molly's defiance faltered, but only for a second. "So what now? You're going to divorce me? Take everything I have?" Alex was quiet for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest. "I don't want anything from you," he said softly, "but I will make sure you get what you deserve." Her expression shifted from defiance to something darker, something almost dangerous. "You're making a huge mistake, Alex. You think you can destroy me? You think the world will believe your side of things?" Alex took a deep breath, knowing that this was the moment. This was the crossroads. There would be no going back after this. "It doesn't matter what the world believes," he said, his voice steady. "I know the truth. And now, so do you." Molly stepped back, her gaze flickering to the door. "You think you're some hero now? You're not." Alex didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked out of the kitchen, his footsteps heavy on the floor as he made his way upstairs. The entire house seemed to close in on him, the walls once filled with laughter and love now seeming cold and uninviting. He walked to their bedroom, the room that had once been their sanctuary. The bed, now a symbol of everything they had lost, sat in the middle of the room. The pillows were disheveled, the sheets tangled and forgotten. It wasn't the bed that made him angry, though. It was the betrayal that had occurred in it. Alex reached for his phone and sent the video to his lawyer, his hands shaking only slightly. He knew this was the end. But even in that moment, even with all the anger and hurt bubbling inside of him, there was a part of him that still wished things could have turned out differently. But the reality was too harsh, too clear. Molly had made her choice, and now it was his turn to make his. The sound of the door opening behind him snapped him out of his thoughts. Molly's voice followed, quieter now, almost pleading. "Alex, please don't do this." He turned, facing her for the first time since the confrontation began. "It's too late for that, Molly," he said coldly. "You've already done what you've done. Now you have to live with it." The following days after the confrontation were a blur of emotion for Alex. The house felt quieter now, eerily so. The air between him and Molly was thick with unresolved tension, each moment more suffocating than the last. The betrayal was no longer something hidden in the shadows. It was out in the open, undeniable. Alex knew that this was the turning point. There was no going back. Everything he had built, the trust, the marriage, the life they had shared, was now in pieces. But as much as the weight of it all pressed down on him, there was also something else bubbling beneath the surface. Something he hadn't felt in a long time: anger. And it wasn't just at Molly. It was at Damien too, the man who had wormed his way into his home, his life, and then had the audacity to think he could replace him. That was the betrayal that hurt the most. But the truth was, Alex was done being the victim. He had given Molly everything: his trust, his loyalty, his love, and now she had destroyed it all for a quick thrill. The worst part? She had planned it. From day one, it had been a game to her. A game to break him down, humiliate him, and in the end, leave him with nothing. The phone call from his lawyer that afternoon only confirmed what he had already known. The evidence was solid, and they had enough to take this to court. Molly's social media campaign, her carefully crafted image of the victim, was unraveling fast. But that didn't stop her from trying to shift the narrative. The first thing she did after their confrontation was start posting on Instagram pictures of her looking heartbroken, captions about how she was finally free from a controlling husband. Alex couldn't help but laugh bitterly as he scrolled through the posts. She had no shame, but what she didn't know, what she never realized, was that people were beginning to see through her. Her followers might have rallied behind her at first, but with every new post, the truth was starting to spread. It wasn't long before Alex started receiving messages from people who had been following Molly for years. They were beginning to see her for who she truly was. The comments on her posts started to shift. Instead of the usual "you're so strong" messages, people began questioning her actions. Some even asked why she hadn't been more open about her relationship with Damien. The cracks in her carefully constructed facade were beginning to show. But it wasn't just the public perception that mattered. It was what Alex had to do next. It was time to take action. A turning point. The meeting with Marcus, his lawyer, was set for the next morning. The gravity of the situation hit Alex hard as he walked into the law firm's sleek office building. The glass walls reflected his image. His once confident self now weighed down by the battle ahead. But something inside him had shifted. This wasn't just about a divorce anymore. It was about standing up for everything he had worked for the life that had been taken from him. Marcus greeted him with a sharp nod as Alex entered his office, his expression unreadable. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his voice laced with a hint of concern. "I'm fine," Alex replied. "Let's get down to business." The lawyer didn't hesitate. He pulled up a file of documents and slid them across the table. We're ready to file for divorce, but we need to prepare for the fallout. Your wife won't go down without a fight. She's going to try everything to make you look bad. Play the victim card even harder than she already has. Alex's jaw tightened. She's already done that, but I'm not going to let her win. I want everything: custody of the dog, the house, and I want full control of the business. She's not getting a penny more than what she's entitled to. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You're sure about this? This is going to get ugly. I don't care. I've lost everything already, Alex said. She made her choice. Now it's my turn to make mine. The conversation shifted as Marcus pulled up more information on Molly's social media activity. She's been pushing her narrative, trying to paint you as the villain. It's working, at least for now. But we have the evidence, Alex. We've got the video. We've got the witnesses. And we have a strong case. Alex nodded, feeling the weight of it all settle on his shoulders. The fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I'm ready, Alex said, his voice steady. Let's do it. Character dynamics and emotional response. Over the next few days, the tension in the house grew even thicker. Alex barely saw Molly. She spent most of her time in the spare bedroom, surrounded by her belongings. But when they did cross paths, the coldness between them was palpable. Molly's eyes were still filled with defiance, but there was a flicker of something else in them now: fear. Alex knew that she could feel the walls closing in. Her social media followers were beginning to question her. Her carefully curated public persona was starting to crumble, and the truth was about to come out in a way she couldn't control. But there was still a part of her that fought back with everything she had. She continued to play the victim, turning every interaction into a power struggle, trying to regain control in any way she could. It was in one of these moments that Alex saw just how far Molly was willing to go to keep her narrative intact. He had come home late one night, and she was sitting in the living room, a bottle of wine in hand. When she saw him, her eyes flashed with fury. "Do you really think you're going to get away with this?" she spat. "Do you think I'm just going to let you take everything from me? You're making a huge mistake. Alex, I'll destroy you." Alex stood in the doorway, his body tense. "You've already destroyed us, Molly. There's nothing left to break." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You're making a huge mistake. You're going to regret this. You don't even know who I am." Alex didn't flinch. "No, I know exactly who you are. And I'm not going to let you drag me down with you." Her face twisted with anger, but for a brief moment, Alex saw something else. Something raw, something human. It was a glimpse of the woman he had loved. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. Pivotal moment. The following week, everything came to a head. Alex's lawyer called him in for a meeting to discuss the final details before the filing. The tension was thick as they went over everything. His assets, Molly's demands, the social media posts, and the video. It was all coming together. But what really pushed everything to the next level was the text Alex received later that afternoon. It was from Damien. "I know you have the video. We need to talk. It's important." Alex's heart pounded in his chest. Damien had a lot to lose now. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. The final showdown was approaching, and Alex felt the stakes rising with each passing day. The war was no longer just about a broken marriage. It was about fighting for his life, his future, and his integrity. He wasn't going to let Molly or Damien destroy him. The phone call with his lawyer ended, and Alex felt the heavy weight of what was to come settle in. It was time for the next step. The weeks that followed were like walking through a storm. Alex's life had become a whirlwind of legal meetings, court preparations, and strategizing every move with his lawyer, Marcus. His once peaceful world was now a battlefield, and the stakes had never been higher. The evidence of Molly's betrayal weighed on him, but it was the emotional devastation that cut the deepest. Every time he looked at her, he saw someone he thought he knew, someone he loved, but the reality was staring back at him, cold and indifferent. The social media posts continued. Molly was relentless, playing the part of the wronged wife, telling her followers her side of the story. She'd cry on camera, dramatically recounting her escape from a controlling marriage, her newfound freedom, her painful journey of healing. At first, the comments were sympathetic, but as the weeks dragged on, people started to question the authenticity of her narrative. Alex had seen the cracks, the whispers from people who knew Molly's true nature, the same people who had seen her manipulate others, and those who had felt the cold sting of her betrayal in their own lives. They were starting to come to him, telling him everything they knew. And then came the call he had been dreading. "Alex, it's Marcus. You need to see this. Molly's gone too far this time." Character dynamics. Alex didn't need to be told twice. His heart pounded as he raced to Marcus's office. He had a feeling this wasn't just another round of her social media theatrics. It had to be something bigger. When he arrived, Marcus was already waiting for him, his face grave. "It's bad, Alex," Marcus said, handing him a tablet. "She's escalating things. It's not just the Instagram posts anymore. She's telling her followers that you've been physically abusive." Alex's blood ran cold. He stared at the screen, watching Molly's latest live stream. She was sitting in a dimly lit room, looking directly at the camera with tears in her eyes. "He's a monster," Molly's voice cracked, her words seeping through the screen. "He controlled me, made me feel like I was nothing. I lived in fear for so long. And now, I'm finally free." The comments flooded in. "We stand with you, girl. You deserve so much better." And the most chilling of all, "I hope you're safe now." Alex's fists clenched. This was it. She was willing to destroy him entirely. He couldn't let her win. Not like this. Plot's pivotal moments. "Do you have any idea how far she's willing to take this?" Alex said, his voice raw with emotion. "She's willing to tear down everything we built." Marcus nodded grimly. "She's trying to control the narrative, Alex. She's painting herself as the victim in a way that's hard to counter in the public eye. But you have the truth on your side." Alex paced back and forth in Marcus's office. The weight of the situation was suffocating, but he couldn't let it break him. "I'm going to put an end to this," Alex said, finally making up his mind. "I need to expose her for who she really is." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You're going to fight fire with fire?" "Exactly," Alex said, his voice steely. "It's time she faces the consequences for her actions. She wants to play the victim? Fine. I'll show everyone what she's really been doing behind the scenes." Tension continues to build. The next few days were a blur. Alex threw himself into the fight, his anger propelling him forward. He met with his team of investigators, and every piece of evidence they gathered only reinforced his resolve. Witnesses who had seen Molly's manipulation up close started coming forward. People from her past, colleagues, even old friends who had been silenced for years. Every new revelation chipped away at the mask she'd so carefully built for herself. Alex wasn't just fighting for his reputation anymore. He was fighting for his dignity, his sanity, and his future. Then came the bombshell. A former employee of Elite Fitness, where Molly had trained with Damien, came forward with a crucial piece of evidence. A recording of a conversation between Molly and Damien, planning the affair. The conversation detailed how Molly had orchestrated everything, how she wanted to humiliate Alex and make sure he knew about the betrayal in the most public way possible. "I'll break him, Damien." Molly's voice was crystal clear in the recording. "I'll make him feel small, make him think he's losing everything. I'll be the one to tell the world what happened. He'll be nothing." The rising stakes. The day Alex received the recording, he knew that it was the turning point. This was the evidence he needed to end the charade once and for all. The war had just escalated to a whole new level. He immediately forwarded the recording to Marcus, and together they prepared for the next move. Alex was determined to confront Molly with the truth in the most public way possible. No more hiding in the shadows, no more pretending. She was going to face the consequences of her actions. Character development. As the tension built, Alex's character began to evolve. No longer the man who sat quietly in the background, letting Molly control the narrative, he had transformed into someone unrecognizable. The man standing before his lawyer now was determined, focused, and prepared to fight for his life. He wasn't just reacting to Molly's moves anymore. He was in control, and he had a plan. His emotions were raw, his heart still heavy from the betrayal, but the man he had become was one who refused to back down. The years of putting up with Molly's manipulation, the constant undermining of his trust, and the painful realization that she had never really loved him, they all came flooding back. But with that pain came something more powerful: clarity. Pivotal confrontation. The day of the confrontation arrived. Alex sat at his kitchen table, his phone buzzing incessantly with messages from Marcus and his investigators. The court date was fast approaching, and everything had lined up perfectly. Alex took a deep breath. He had prepared for this moment. There was no turning back now. He texted Molly, "We need to talk. Now." He didn't know what to expect when she arrived, but part of him knew that it wasn't going to be an easy conversation. When Molly walked in, she was as composed as ever. Her eyes locked onto his, a flicker of something cold passing through them. "What now, Alex?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. He didn't flinch. "I know everything. The affair, the lies, the manipulation. You can't keep pretending anymore, Molly." She narrowed her eyes. "You think you can destroy me? You think I'm afraid of you?" "No, but you should be afraid of the truth," Alex replied. "It's over." He pressed play on his phone, the recording blaring through the speakers. Molly's face turned white as she heard her own words, words that had been meant to destroy him, playing for her to hear. The confrontation had reached its boiling point. Alex's fingers tightened around his phone as Molly's face drained of color. The words she had spoken with such confidence, planning his destruction, now hung in the air like a heavy cloud. The room was silent, save for the hum of tension that crackled between them. Molly stared at the phone in disbelief, the color returning to her face but now flushed with a mix of shock, anger, and, oddly enough, something Alex couldn't quite place: fear. She took a step back, her shoulders stiffening. "This isn't how it was supposed to go," she muttered under her breath, her voice barely audible. Alex didn't look away from her, his gaze unwavering. "No, it wasn't. But this is where the lies end, Molly. This is the truth." She stood there, hands trembling at her sides, her mouth opening and closing as if searching for words that wouldn't come. It wasn't the smug, confident woman who had controlled the narrative for so long. The facade was slipping, and the cracks were becoming impossible to ignore. "You planned this, didn't you?" Alex said, his voice calm, but with an undercurrent of rage that made it even sharper. "You set me up to fall, to look like the villain in our own story. You and Damien. You wanted to humiliate me, but what you didn't count on is that I'd fight back." The silence was deafening as the reality of his words sank in. Molly's eyes flickered away, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. She was used to being in control, used to manipulating everything around her. But now, faced with the evidence of her betrayal, she was cornered. Alex stepped closer, his voice colder than ever. "I loved you, Molly. I built this life for us. I supported you when you wanted to change careers. I put my trust in you. But you decided to break me. Well, guess what? It's over now. There's nothing left." Molly took a deep breath, her lips pressing into a thin line. She looked like she was about to say something, but Alex beat her to it. "I'm done with your lies, your games, and your social media circus. You think you're going to control the narrative with your followers and fake tears? It's too late for that. The truth is already out." She took a shaky step back, as though trying to regain some space. But there was no escaping the weight of the truth, and Alex could see that she knew it. She could lie to everyone else, but not to herself anymore. "I didn't want it to end like this," she said finally, her voice raw with something that almost sounded like regret. "I didn't want to hurt you, Alex, but you just didn't see it. You didn't see me. I wanted more. I wanted to feel alive again." Alex's heart twisted, but he refused to let her manipulate him anymore. "This isn't about me not seeing you. This is about you choosing someone else, betraying me and everything we had for your own selfish reasons. You made your bed, Molly, and now you'll lie in it." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time, Alex didn't soften. He couldn't. Not after everything. She had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. "I'm filing for divorce," Alex said, his voice firm and resolute. "And you're going to lose everything you thought you had. I'm not the one who's going to be left with nothing, Molly. You are." The room felt smaller as Molly's face crumpled, her eyes darting to the door like she was considering running. But she didn't. Instead, she collapsed into the nearest chair, her head in her hands. She wasn't crying for him anymore, Alex realized. She was crying for herself. The woman who had spent so long building an image, carefully curating her life, was now faced with the reality of what she had done. And it was all unraveling, one thread at a time. Climactic turn of events. Days passed, but the tension in the house never eased. Alex's resolve only strengthened. His lawyer, Marcus, now working around the clock to prepare for the upcoming court battle. Each piece of evidence they gathered felt like another weight lifted off Alex's shoulders. The whispers from Molly's past continued to pour in. Former colleagues, old friends, even acquaintances from her social media circle. All of them had witnessed the manipulation, the lies, the cruelty. And then, just as Alex thought he couldn't be more certain, another bombshell dropped. A former gym employee came forward with a confession. One that would destroy whatever was left of Molly's carefully curated story. He was the one who always picked the times when Alex was home, the employee said. Molly wanted him to walk in on them. She wanted to get caught. She wanted to destroy him, publicly. Alex stood frozen as the reality of the situation settled in. Molly hadn't just cheated on him. She had orchestrated the entire thing. She had manipulated not just him, but everyone around her, including Damien, the personal trainer who had been more than just a pawn in her game. Alex's pulse quickened. This wasn't just about a broken marriage anymore. It was about exposing the truth. It was about clearing his name. And the truth was damning. There was no coming back from this for Molly. He could already see it. Molly's empire was crumbling. Her fitness brand, once a shining beacon of success, was now a distant memory. Her sponsors had pulled out one by one, and the public backlash was growing. The Instagram followers she had once leaned on for validation were now starting to see her for what she truly was. A woman who had built her life on lies and manipulation. Character dynamics. As Alex moved forward with the legal proceedings, the dynamics between him and Molly shifted entirely. She was no longer the woman he had loved. She wasn't even the person he had married. She was someone else. Someone who had crossed every line in the book, and now was faced with the consequences of her choices. Alex couldn't deny the hurt, the anger, but there was something else too. Clarity. He had survived the worst of it, and now he was reclaiming control. He wasn't going to let Molly drag him down any further. But for Molly, the walls were closing in. As the days passed, her carefully crafted victim narrative began to fall apart. Her fans, once blindly supportive, began to turn on her. The media caught wind of the scandal, and suddenly, she was the villain in her own story. It wasn't just the affair that destroyed her. It was the lies, the manipulation, the way she had weaponized her relationship with Alex to build an empire. Her own supporters were now questioning their loyalty, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Pivotal moment in the courtroom. The day of the trial arrived, and Alex walked into the courtroom with a sense of resolve that he hadn't felt in months. The evidence was undeniable. His lawyer, Marcus, had prepared for this moment with precision, ensuring that every piece of evidence, from the recordings to the witness testimonies, was locked in place. Molly had arrived with her legal team, still playing the part of the victim, but Alex could see through her act. She was clinging to a facade, one that had already crumbled long ago. The judge entered, and the room went silent. Alex took a deep breath as the case began, but in his mind, there was no question about the outcome. He had the truth on his side, and that was all that mattered. The court was filled with tension as testimonies were presented. The recordings played in full for the first time, Molly's own words condemning her. The room fell silent, the jury visibly reacting. Alex could feel the weight of it, the satisfaction that came with knowing justice was on the way. Molly's defense had no answers. There were no more lies left to tell. Ready for the final step, As the trial wore on, Alex knew this was the turning point. His life was about to change. The woman who had betrayed him in the worst possible way was finally going to face the consequences of her actions. But for Alex, this was about more than just winning a case. This was about reclaiming his life, his dignity, and his future. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was thriving. And soon, Molly would realize that no amount of manipulation or lies could stop the truth from coming out. As the courtroom doors closed behind Alex, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. It wasn't just the relief of knowing that he was finally done with Molly. It was the satisfaction of seeing the truth come to light. The trial had taken everything Molly had built and dismantled it piece by piece, showing her for the manipulative woman she had become. Alex had won, and it wasn't just a legal victory. It was a personal one. Molly had tried every trick in the book. She'd played the victim. She'd used her followers, her image, and even the media to paint Alex as the villain in their story. But the truth had a way of piercing through all of that, and the courtroom had seen her for what she truly was. The final decision came quickly. The judge ruled in Alex's favor. He retained full custody of Buddy, the dog Molly had once used to try and manipulate him. The house was his. The firm was his. And Molly, well, she walked away with nothing but the consequences of her own actions. It wasn't a complete victory. Nothing could erase the betrayal, but it was justice. And for the first time in months, Alex could finally breathe without the constant weight of doubt hanging over him. The aftermath. Weeks passed since the verdict. Alex spent his days working at the firm, rebuilding what Molly had tried to destroy. There were some sleepless nights, moments when his mind would wander back to the good memories, to the woman he had once loved. But those moments were fleeting. In the end, the marriage had been nothing more than a lie, one that had been revealed, and in the light of truth, there was no going back. Molly, on the other hand, wasn't doing as well. Her social media empire had crumbled after the scandal. Sponsors pulled out, and the public turned against her when they saw her true colors. Her followers, once so loyal, began questioning everything she had built her brand on. The fitness influencer who had once promoted health and wellness was now just another cautionary tale of betrayal and deceit. Her Instagram account, once filled with curated perfection, became a battleground. Posts of her escape from a toxic marriage only fueled the flames of her downfall. Her sponsors distanced themselves from her, and the media wasn't interested in her narrative of redemption anymore. The truth was too powerful to ignore. As for Damien, he disappeared from the scene. His career as a trainer was all but over, and though Alex had given him a chance to make things right, Damien knew he had played a part in the betrayal. He had no intention of sticking around to see the consequences of his actions. He slinked away, quietly, like a man who had learned his lesson the hard way. Character arcs. For Alex, the divorce had been a catalyst for growth. The man who had walked into that courtroom a few months ago, broken and betrayed, was not the same man who walked out. He had learned painful lessons about trust and love. But he had also learned how to stand up for himself. He wasn't the victim of Molly's games anymore. He wasn't the passive husband who had been manipulated into thinking everything was fine. He had become someone stronger, someone who knew his worth. The most important thing Alex had gained through this process wasn't money, property, or even the satisfaction of knowing he had won. It was peace. His life, once clouded by Molly's deceit, was finally his own again. The chains had been broken. He was free. And Buddy, his loyal golden retriever, had become more than just a reminder of what was lost. Buddy was the symbol of what Alex had gained: trust, loyalty, and unconditional love. Every morning, Alex would walk Buddy through the park, savoring the quiet, simple moments. He didn't need the grand gestures or the public admiration that Molly had craved. He was content with the small victories: his firm, his life, and his dog by his side. The final confrontation. Months later, Alex was sitting in his office, looking out over the city skyline. The weight of everything that had happened, the heartbreak, the betrayal, had finally started to fade. The view before him was just a reflection of his own growth. A city full of opportunities, a future full of potential. And in that moment, Alex realized that he had everything he needed. He had rebuilt his life from the ashes of his marriage. He wasn't a broken man anymore. He wasn't the person Molly had tried to make him. And as he sat there, he realized that he didn't need anything more than this: peace, strength, and the future. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a message from Marcus, his lawyer. "Molly's trying to fight the settlement again. She's not letting go." Alex smiled, a wry smile that held no bitterness, only resignation. He had done everything he could. The game was over. Molly had lost, and no amount of fighting would change the fact that she had lost it all for her own ego. He put the phone down, his mind already moving on. He had his life to live, and he wasn't going to waste another second looking back. He looked at Buddy, who lay by his feet, and stood up. "Come on, boy," Alex said, his voice calm and resolute. "Let's go for a walk." They stepped outside into the crisp air, the city alive with possibilities. For the first time in a long time, Alex felt like he was truly starting over. The weight of the past had been lifted, and with every step he took, he felt the freedom that came with it. Conclusion: Alex had survived. He had been betrayed by the one person he had trusted the most, but in the end, he had emerged stronger than ever. The lesson he learned was painful, but it was one he would never forget. Trust was something that had to be earned, not just given. And while love could be a beautiful thing, it could also be destructive when misused. As for Molly, her story had played out in the most dramatic way possible. But in the end, it was the truth that had won. The lies she told, the games she played, the manipulation, it had all caught up to her. She had underestimated Alex, but more importantly, she had underestimated the power of honesty and self-worth. The sun was setting as Alex and Buddy walked through the park. Life was moving on, and so was he. And with that, the story of Alex and Molly was over. Remember to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and comment below. Thanks for watching.